for obvious reasons. Handling that new animal, things falling. I have my lights turning on and off. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle, and this is Elle's Reptiles. This week we are doing a video that will hopefully help you out if you have just brought home your first new ball python, or maybe you've brought home a second ball python and you're just trying to refresh your memory. We are going to go over what you should do with that ball python and what you shouldn't do in its first week with you. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by iHeartGeckos, so make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out all about this awesome company. Let's get started. All right, things just falling. Let's very quickly go over things that you already should have done. You should already have that tank set up. You should already have the temperatures correct. You should already have bedding in there. You should already have a bunch of hides in there. You should make sure that the lighting is correct, as in this is a nocturnal animal. This animal does not need light at nighttime. It does not need night lights, no red lights, no blue lights. It does not need lights at night. And make sure that you have a source where you know you are going to get this animal's food from. Finding appropriately sized rodents can be a little bit tricky sometimes, so make sure that you know where you're going to get that food for your animal on a regular basis. I highly suggest either little local non-chain pet stores. You can get big quantities for pretty cheap from reptile shows. You also do have the option of having rodents shipped to you, but that is quite a bit more expensive because they have to ship refrigerated, so just keep that in mind. Just make sure you have a steady source of food for these guys. Alright, so you are bringing that animal home. First and most important, it is always important to quarantine new animals. This just means to have their setup away from any other reptiles that you may have, just in case there's some kind of parasites or some kind of just anything. We don't want to spread it to your other reptiles. And you also, as soon as you get them home, you are going to want to check to make sure that they do not have any external parasites like mites. These are going to be little black things that are like pushed into their scales or around their eyes, their mouths. Also, be sure that they don't have any sort of injuries. Basically, you are just checking to make sure they look healthy. Be safe, double check, get some good lighting, and check all that out before you put them into their new home. Let's talk about feeding your new ball python. You are not going to feed that snake for the first week. That animal is going to be stressed out. Everything that they have known is now different. They're in a new home. There's an entirely different environment. There's a new setup. There's potentially different bedding. Everything about what they are in at this moment is different. Because of that, we don't want to try to feed this animal for the first week. Ball pythons already tend to be really finicky eaters, and if a ball python is stressed out, it's going to be a finicky eater. I'm not saying anything bad is going to come of you attempting to feed your ball python too early, but the possibility is pretty high that they're not going to eat, and so that rodent that you have purchased is just going to go to waste. And if they do not take that rodent after that week, it's okay. You want to wait about another week before you try again. You do not want to try to feed them over and over and over and over again, because that is stressful for your animal. And stress then in turn leads to them not wanting to eat. So it's just a whole cycle. We want to try to keep these guys under as little stress as possible. Just keep in mind that ball pythons are not an animal that eats every day. They only eat once a week as babies anyway. If it has been a considerable amount of time, or you notice that your ball python is losing weight or underweight, there are a few different things that you can do to try to help your animal eat. I'm not going to go into all that in this video, but I will leave a video link here, I think it is, about just feeding tips to get your ball python to eat. And obviously make sure that they have water, make sure that they have access to clean water at all times, and make sure that this is in a pretty large dish that they can get into to help them shed if they need to. So let's talk about handling these guys. You want to wait at least a week to handle these guys. If you feed them after that week mark, then wait a day or two after they eat to handle them for obvious reasons. Handling that new animal, things falling. I have my lights turning on and off. Handling that ball python is going to be stressful for them, especially if they are a baby that is not used to handling at all. That's going to be stressful. So they have now been put into this brand new environment. Everything's new. That's stressful. And then if you're trying to handle them and they are not used to being handled, that's a whole bunch of stress all at once. So we want to give them time to settle in before we try to handle them. Less stress from being handled will hopefully ensure that they will eat when it is time to feed them. And just a quick note to throw in there, I always get people that tell me that their reptile was really active, they wanted to be handled as soon as they brought them home, they didn't have to wait, and they ate just fine, all that stuff. That is fantastic. If your ball python is coming out and he's active and he's eating and all of these things, then you might not have to wait. Every reptile's personality is different, so this may not specifically apply to you, but it does apply to most reptiles. And when the time does come around for you to start handling them, understand that a baby ball python that you have just brought home probably isn't going to be very active when you are handling them. They're not going to be like me handling Sterling, where he's just going and going and going. Sterling is used to being out. Sterling likes being out. I've had Sterling for 5 or 6 years now. But as a baby, this is not usually the case. Usually they ball up. They are going to get scared and they are just going to be a ball. Hence the name ball python. This is completely normal. It just means that they're not used to it, that they are scared being out. Once you start handling them more and more, it will probably become a situation where you're taking them out, they're in a ball, but after a couple of minutes, they start to get out and explore. That is a completely normal behavior for them. With Sylvanas, when we first got her, she would ball up often, and after a couple minutes, if you just kind of gently stroked her side, then she would come out and she would start to explore, so maybe try that too. Also know that in that first week, they're gonna hide a lot. Just in general, they do seem like they hide a lot, but that is because they are a nocturnal animal, so they're not going to be out and moving around in the daytime. If you've had things like bearded dragons who are always out during the daytime, that behavior might look a little scary, the fact that they are always hiding, but it's completely normal. As long as where they're hiding is warm and they have a cool spot on the other side of the tank and they have the ability to go back and forth, you know those temperatures are correct, then them hiding a lot during the first little bit that you have them home is okay. And last thing we're gonna talk about is shedding. What do you do if your ball python happens to shed in the first week that you have them home? Don't handle them. You shouldn't be handling them anyway, but just know that when a ball python starts to shed, one of the things that happens is the scale around its eye separates and it gets that milky look, that foggy look, the blue look, or whatever you want to call it, and they can't see. So they are going to get incredibly defensive if they are already stressed out, they already aren't used to being handled, and now they can't see you. On top of that, they're going to be very, very defensive. When your ball python is an adult, when you have had them for a while and you understand their likes and dislikes, your ball python might be a type that is perfectly okay being handled during shedding, but that's not something that we want to really play around with in the first week of having them home when they're already stressed out. The next thing, make sure that when they are about to shed, you either have a wet hide box in there or you bump up the humidity to help them with shedding. And the biggest note here, pay attention to how that shed goes. If your ball python sheds in one beautiful, perfect piece, fantastic. If your ball python is shedding in tiny little pieces, it seems to be stuck in places, that means that adjustments need to be made. You either need to overall bump up their humidity or again, provide them a moist shedding box, a box with some sort of wet something in it, like wet sphagnum moss is my preferred go-to. Wet paper towels can be used. If you use wet paper towels, you need to change it very often because paper towels do mold and we do not want your animal breathing in mold. If your ball python's shed is sticking over and over and over, it could cause health issues in the future, so we want to try to prevent that. And super quick note here about shedding, it is very normal for your ball python to only use the bathroom when they shed. Unlike lizards, your ball python does not need to be using the bathroom every day. That is not a normal thing. So don't panic if you don't see your ball python go to the bathroom for a couple of weeks. But that is it. That is all that I have for this video. Basically, it comes down to leave them alone for at least a week and they should be good to go. Leave in the comments below your best tips for new beginner ball python owners or something that you found super interesting when you first got your ball python, because I like to read those things and those comments always help other people out. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by I Heart Geckos. I Heart Geckos is a wonderful company. They make these awesome conversion kits that allow you to take any tank and turn it into a front opening tank. These come in various sizes. There's 20 gallons, there's 40 gallons, even go as small as 10-gallon tanks. There are lots of options here to make awesome bioactive tanks or just awesome front opening tanks for those geckos or amphibians or whatever you may be using them for. Make sure if you do happen to order one of these very affordable conversion kits, you leave Elle's Reptiles in the How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they know that you guys are coming from here. Thank you so much to iHeartGeckos for continuing to sponsor these videos. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on my other socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and some Wednesdays. This week's Instagram shoutout is here, and this week's subscriber shoutout is here. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing and following and sharing and commenting and all of that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. Get this done. Pet. We're gonna cut. Make sure that you have this animal's house set up away from all the other ones. Make sure that you have this make sure you have your snakes. If it has been a considerable amount of time shedding, what do you do if your beard and last I took that picture of me and Sterling last week, so we're gonna put that in the thumbnail, maybe, or we'll just put Sterling. Done. I've only recorded for 20 minutes. Hopefully this video is long enough.